Welcome back to another Service Management Leadership Podcast. This week, I have Ken Wendle with us. Ken, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, Ken and I met at Support World a couple months back, and it's great meeting your acquaintance. Ken wrote a book, looks like this. Sorry if it's backwards on video. It's called The Value Formula, and we'll be talking a little bit about that on the podcast. So those of you that haven't read it yet, it may help you just understand a different perspective. Hopefully, I think this is what this podcast serves. So tell us about the book, Ken, if you would.
Okay. I'm happy to do that. And again, thanks for having me. It was great meeting you as well. So basically, as far as the book is concerned, it was published in the fall of 2019. And my plan was to do some promotion and stuff like that in 2020. And of course, we kind of know what happened there. So it's been kind of a slow burn, but it's gratifying to see it getting some traction and more attention and in a lot of different areas. The ideas that are contained in the book are really, they've been kind of bouncing around in my head for some time. And I was inspired by a quote I read by Albert Einstein, where he said, in essence, don't seek to be a person of success, seek to be a person of value. Mm-hmm. And that's always kind of been my philosophy in business, is that, if I can add value to a situation, to an organization or whatever, that's where I felt like I was, most beneficial, most of value. And ironically, learning that providing value is actually one of the elements of success as the world defines it. So I always like to point out that the content, to a large extent, I can't claim is original to me. I think, things stick to us over the years. And basically it comes from a long, pretty long career. Things that I observed along the way, things that I saw that worked and didn't work. A lot of research. I mean, I read dozens of books, read scores of articles, interviewed a lot of experts in their field, and I added probably a good healthy dose of common sense as well as a smattering of wisdom. And that's kind of what it's all about.
All right. So let's push in a smidge on this.
Okay. All right.
And so the value formula, obviously the topic is value. Why do you think value is easy or difficult? I actually think it's difficult in a room full of people or in an organization to really focus on. So why do you think that is, that value is this carrot in front of us that we chase all the time and sometimes get closer to than others?
Well, you and I had a brief conversation about ITIL 4. And one of the things I think we both agreed on is that the guidelines, the guidance, the 7 points are probably one of the best aspects of it. And the very first one is about focus on value. And yet I oftentimes will say that value is kind of like the weather, that a lot of people talk about it, but nobody really seems to be doing anything about it. And so and I think to a certain extent, that's kind of human nature. We tend to be somewhat myopic and think in terms of what's in it for me, what's in it for me, what's in it for me. And as I point out in the book, one of the first things I talk about with value is that it's other focus. It's really about what's in it for others, or WIFO. And so it's counter to, somewhat natural tendency. And the irony, though, is that if you focus on what's important to other people and what they consider of value, then that, again, leads to, more likely than not, the things that you're looking for as well. Zig Ziglar said, help enough other people get what they want, you get what you want. So the whole notion of value co-creation kind of comes into play with that.
So Zig Ziglar, I love Zig Ziglar.
Yeah, he's great.
If I may throw in one of his quotes, somebody said, why do we need to focus on motivation? Because it goes away after a day. And his response was, why do we bathe every day? If that goes away every day as well. And
exactly,
I just that clings to me, that we need to surround ourselves with people that help us.
I think he kind of added, if you don't shower every day or take a bath every day, you begin to stink.
Yeah.
And just like if you don't get motivation on a regular basis, your thinking starts to stink. So.
Yes. And I really enjoy Zig Ziglar. And if you think of the times that he came through, he was out on that bleeding edge for a lot of people. And just in thought process. So when I read the book, the V stands for something, the A and the L, the U and the E.
Right.
the A for alignment and E for execution were two that really struck me. And I
Okay.
say that because you mentioned if we try to add value to other people, to me that means alignment. And
Yes.
if we execute, meaning we do provide value for others,
Right.
then it brings it all together. And to me, those are like the key points that are missing in many organizations, is that alignment on value and
Mhm.
how to execute.
Yeah. Um, just kind of like maybe tie together. V is for vision.
Uh-huh.
And you and I had a conversation via LinkedIn about that we spend a lot of time talking about strategy, which
Oh, yeah.
is informed by vision, and maybe more so there. The A stands for alignment, the L is for leverage, the U is for uniqueness, which support that alignment. And then underneath that, in the model that I have, is execution. Because again, as you point out, nothing happens, no value is delivered until we execute. So alignment is basically, when it comes to alignment, it makes sense that we align to our vision, our goals, our mission, our strategy. Otherwise, we're wasting effort. And one of the things I try to stress is that we have resources and we have capabilities, and we combine those things to create something of value to our customers, to our fellow workers, and so on and so forth. So the better we use those resources and capabilities, the more value we can actually generate. So it's really kind of based on that premise. So when it comes to alignment, it makes sense we align again to our strategy, mission, goals, and objectives. We do that through our daily activities. What we do on a day-to-day basis either leads us toward our strategy or leads us away from our strategy. So we want to stay focused. We want to stay aligned. So the challenge, though, is that it's way too easy to get distracted by other things, the urgent things that pop up from day to day. What I refer to as the whirlwind, those things that just kind of encroach on our time and our attention. So it keeps us from maintaining that focus. I love the quote, Stephen Covey had this in his book, that the most important thing is to make sure that the most important thing remains the most important thing. And so the one thing I explicitly point out in the book is that the 5 elements are really kind of interconnected, part of a whole. And fortunately, the issue of this alignment and supporting this alignment is really addressed ultimately in the chapter on execution. I discussed the adopting a process for execution, and a lot of organizations, they think execution just kind of is a byproduct of doing the stuff they do. But execution is really a focused thing that people need to know what the goal is, and B, they need to know what they need to do to achieve it. They need to know where they are in relationship to achieving it. And lastly, and I think this is also very important, they need to hold themselves accountable for the achievement as well as their teammates. So that's kind of the process in a nutshell. And that particular chapter was heavily drawn from a book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution, which is an outstanding book that I highly recommend that people read that.
So whenever we talk execution, my brain goes back to the 1970s, 1980s Tampa Bay Buccaneers football team, when they were really bad. And Coach John McKay was asked after the game, "Hey, what do you think of your team's execution?" And his response is, "I'm all for it." And which makes me chuckle in a way, because he was trying to bring humor to a bad situation.
Right. Yeah.
But
Execution. I used to work with a guy years ago. His name was Jim Duff. He passed away a few years back, but he was probably one of the most brilliant service management consultants I ever dealt with. And he and I were talking one day about ITIL back then, like it's been 15, 20 years ago or more. And he made a comment. He said, "These are good ideas." He said, "but they're worthless unless you execute." And he said, "Execution is the secret sauce." And I'll never forget that. It was kind of like a mic drop. It was like, boom. And so I've actually done a presentation multiple times called "Execution is the Secret Sauce." And it really is about results, because you don't get the kudos for a great strategy. And even alignment is not necessarily something that you're going to get a lot of accolades for. It's until you execute and actually deliver the results that's really ultimately what it's about.
And I think until V3 hammered that home, that's where value is realized. And I
Yes.
go back to another quote, if I may, Mike Tyson, who said, everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the mouth. And I think that's how, to
Yeah.
lead to our next, like, go down a different rabbit trail. I think we spent so much effort on strategy, and I
Yes.
think of those people preparing to fight Mike Tyson. They worried and they strategized, but things happen, right? Like, when
Right.
you go into execution phase, stuff happens, and
It does.
we are judged purely on our execution. Like, that's the only
True.
thing people see. They never see the
True.
stuff behind the scenes.
No.
And I I always think, how can we remedy that situation? How can we turn the focus from strategy to execution?
Yeah. And I mean, I fully agree with that. And part of it, and again, if you look at the value formula model, the stars at the top, that's your vision. It's got to be compelling. It's got to be something, that is informed by your why you exist, what's your purpose. And then again, focusing on that through alignment, and then, leveraging what you can outside of your organization, leveraging your own uniqueness internally, and then executing. And if again, there's a book called the Work of Leaders, and they talk about vision, alignment, and execution, which I feel like I use that to a certain extent in my book. It was another one that I really got into to help kind of inform me on what's going on, and I added the leverage. And their idea of execution was more about building momentum, and that's absolutely critical. But the thing that I believe is more important than that will actually lead to momentum is a process.
Mhm.
Knowing how do we execute, and really drilling into it. Again, those 4 points of knowing what the goal is, knowing what you need to do to accomplish it, knowing where you are, having a scoreboard, and then holding each other accountable. Because a lot of times we'll accept excuses from ourselves, too easy to do, or we'll accept excuses from our teammates. And and the last couple of years, if anything, have given us lots of excuses. It's COVID, it's the
Yeah.
pandemic, right? And so that has prevented, I think, a lot of organizations from executing. I mean, I have to be honest. I mean, I found myself also the same thing, right? But it takes that focus. And what I talk about, and I think I don't know if I'll mention it at the end, but I'm doing a webinar in about a month or so, actually, I guess in August, on the chapter on execution, which I'll tell people how they can register for it if that's okay. But I talk about in there about how you really need to have a process for execution. You can't just allow it to just kind of like happen organically, because it won't necessarily do that.
And there's certain personalities that are better for strategy and certain ones that are better for execution, in my opinion, because
Yes.
some people are pie in the sky strategy leaders, which are great, and other people are tactician,
Yes.
and they can pinpoint really what is needed to get us over the line. And I
Right.
think that having those people in your fold is a big step forward, and it's hard
Yes.
to identify that skill set until you're deep in the mud, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, one of the things again, the book, the Work of Leaders, they talk in there about having that vision, having that, that strategic mindset. And that the quote that they have in there is that you can have a vision without leadership, but you can't have leadership without a vision. And I think a lot of leaders fall into the trap that that's all they need is a compelling vision, and that people will get on board, and they'll make things happen. But again, as I learned as I was writing my book, and as I learned in researching that art of getting things done, execution, I realized it's not just, that's part of it. That's the starting point. But you have to follow through. You have to get the organization aligned. You have to understand we are measured by our results.
Yep.
So, and that really boils down to execution.
And that's how we're incentivized as well, if I may.
That's true. That's true.
And so we are incentivized by what we do well. And I throw out a lot of things out on LinkedIn, and one of them is, I don't care how well Tom Brady hits a golf ball, but he is rewarded by how well he throws a football. And
Exactly.
you go through all the professional athletes or professional people at any other.
Mhm.
I'm a big
Yes.
follower of John Gordon, who's a positive leadership guy. Don't
Mhm.
care how well he plays sports. What I mean? I care about
Right.
what he does well.
True.
And
That's true.
I think we have to, and that gets down to execution.
Yes.
So, Ken, as we wrap up,
Uh-huh.
I thank you for joining us, but are there any parting words you'd like to leave us with that maybe we didn't cover too well?
Well, I mean, again, I appreciate your invitation to be here. Um, I can wrap up by saying, a lot of businesses, I should say there's a lot of business pundits
Mhm.
out there that say, follow your passion,
Right.
do what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. And one of the things I've learned is I wasn't always following my passion. But I always put passion into what I was doing. And I think that that's probably one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was put passion into what you're doing. In the book, I have a quote from Saint Mother Teresa where I say that, not everybody is called to do great things, but we're all called, well, we can do small things with great love. And, you know, I believe that doing something with great love is actually a great thing
Right.
because it's somewhat rare sometimes in business. There's a guy by the name of Tim Sanders who was I think he was the chief solutions officer for Yahoo. And he did a presentation at a conference I was at a few years ago called Love is the Killer App. And I believe that organizations excel when they love what they do, not necessarily that they they love what they do, but they put love into what they do. They love their customers, they love their coworkers. And so my advice is to, again, bring passion to whatever it is that you're doing and to do whatever you do with a good amount of love. And that, again, if you love your customers, if you love your coworkers, you're going to want to provide them value. And so I think that that's probably that's what I kind of would leave people with is this idea of put passion in what you're doing. Don't just, follow your passion.
I understand because that looks so different. Like my passion at age 20 looked different than 25, 30, and so on,
Yes,
but we can
yes,
bring that fire, that energy, that passion with us. So,
yes,
Ken, thank you for joining us.
you bet.
You mentioned this webinar or webcast you're about to do, but how can people get in touch with
Yes,
you, your book, this work you're doing?
I appreciate that. So first of all, like you reached out via, well, I met you at a conference. And so if I'm ever at a conference and somebody's there, feel free to come up and talk to me. I love meeting the people like you at conferences. They can reach me on my email address, which if I can give that is ken.wendle, W-E-N-D-L-E at edifyitsm.com. Also via LinkedIn, if you do a search for my name, you're going to find me on LinkedIn. If a person with an email address in reaching out to me, I'm happy to send them. I have a PDF that I created that have 2 posters in there that kind of capture the essence of what my book and the concept of the service of the value formula is about. Also, if a person's interested in a signed copy, if they go to my website, they can find information on how to do that. There's a Kindle version on Amazon. So if you do a search for Ken Wendle, that's the easiest way to find it. Just do a search for Ken Wendle, you'll find the book. And then lastly, again, as you mentioned, I am doing a webinar. I've been doing a series of webinars for ITSMF USA based upon the book and the content of the book. The next one, noon Eastern time on Thursday, August the 11th. I think that's noon Eastern time. I can double check that. But if you go to their website, if you go to itsmfusa.org, the information is about that. So it's actually the chapter on execution that I'm going to be covering in a lot more detail than what we were able to discuss here.
Well, thank you for joining us. I wish you good luck on
Thank
everything,
you.
and
Thank
everybody
you.
reach out to Ken Wendle. If you see this on LinkedIn, you'll see he'll be tagged. And so I thank you once again, Ken, and
You're
I
welcome.
hope you and everybody else has a great day.
Thank you. And I agree. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Bye.